Another aspect that we want to pay attention to in this history of the Bible is the way in which the books of especially of the Old Testament, appear. There is a particular order in both the Hebrew scriptures and in the Septuagint that has a theological reason, or many theological reasons. So we'll go over that. First, in this slide, the Old Testament. If you read the way in which the Hebrew scriptures are ordered by Jewish leaders and Jewish scholars, they begin obviously with the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. But instead of ending with prophetic books, it ends with the end of Jewish history in 2nd Chronicles, which corresponds to the time when the Jewish people were in exile in Babylon. They were in exile for around 50 years, and then they were freed from exile by another king who invades the Babylonians, and his name is Cyrus. Now, Cyrus, seeing that all of these Jewish people are being held exile, gives them the opportunity to return to what was then Israel and rebuild, especially the Jewish, the temple in Jerusalem, as well as the rest of the city. So in the Hebrew Old Testament, the story begins with the Torah, with creation, and ends with the return of the exiles, which took place probably in the late 500s or early 400s BCE. Now that's how the Hebrew Old Bible was ordered by Jewish scholars. The Christian Old Testament was ordered differently by church leaders. It follows the order of the Septuagint, and instead of ending with the return of the exiles to Jerusalem, the Christian Old Testament ends with a series of prophetic books. In particular, the last one is the book of Malachi. The book of Malachi has a passage in which it talks about God's return and talks about a particular figure who will herald God's return. That figure is called Elijah. Elijah was one of the, if not the greatest prophet in Jewish history, and somebody who is symbolized by the word Elijah is said to be coming soon to proclaim the day of the Lord. In the New Testament, the church, when the church looked back at the New Testament, they considered that emphasis on the completion of prophecy in Christ to be the place where it made most sense for the Old Testament to end. So, in other words, the Christian Old Testament starts with Genesis and the Torah and ends up with a prophetic word about the return of God and a figure named Elijah who will proclaim or herald that return.